People with low but functional intelligence, what's it like to know that you aren't smart like other people? I think I can answer this since I do consider myself below average in terms of intellect. It really just feels limiting. When I was younger, my dad used to call me stupid all the time when I couldn't do basic stuff. It's annoying because each time I'll sit there and say to myself, come on, this is simple stuff, you should know how to do this. But I just couldn't, and I'll see the frustration on my dad's face grow. In everyday life, I constantly have that fear that I'll do something silly, so I tend to overthink everything I do. This partially led to me being a very quiet person because I was just too scared that I'd say something stupid. People who were close to me would see me slip up at times. As a teenager, things got worse. People saw how slow and simple I was, so used to that to make me the laughingstock, trick me into doing stuff for them, such as giving them money. I think my most painful memories in late high school when I had these teachers who were not extremely condescending to me, but also intentionally made me do stuff they knew I'd mess up. I can just tell I was a constant topic of discussion when they went to the pub after school. I worry about my future a lot. The idea of getting a job gives me anxiety as I feel like I'm just going to keep messing up. I often believe I'll end up homeless at some point as the intellectual pressures of life get to be too much. I just feel limited in what I can do on almost every level and in many ways feel I can't enjoy life as much. So, how did I cope with being stupid? I tried faking being smart at first, and funny enough, I did trick a few people temporarily, even my dad and family. I read a ton, started watching science documentaries, and began studying very hard. One of the better decisions of my life as I found out that I really enjoyed learning about science and I did really well in school due to all the hard work I put in and a fantastic tutor. However, the latter part didn't last. My tutor passed away and I think I may have hit an intellectual wall as I was no longer doing well in school despite the hard work. This has left me quite depressed, not mentally, just down a lot. And to your last question, well, as I mentioned, I began reading a lot and taking an interest in the world around me in my early teens. So if anything, I'm what one would describe as quite knowledgeable, at least on topics like science, history, and nature. Not to an expert level, of course, but even before that, having the awareness of my intellectual limitations made me very sad as a child, so no bliss for me. Story 2. I'm currently studying to become an aerospace engineer. This is the second best technical school in the country, and our department's graduates are highly sought after by local companies, or so I've heard. The thing is, I don't belong here. I can't understand 95% of the material taught in lectures, and I have to spend almost every waking moment of my life reading and trying to understand it. I tried raising my hand during lectures whenever I was lost or had questions, but I did it so often that I could see the look of disappointment on my lecturer's face. Mind you, most of them are not passionate about teaching in the first place. Asking quote-unquote friends results in me being laughed at directly or becoming a laughingstock in the group chat. Even if they do help, they have to explain it to me 2 or 3 times before I get it. Usually, I don't, but I pretend I do because I'm too embarrassed to ask again. I have this friend who I am often seen with. He constantly reminds me that I'm stupid. Last Friday, we were talking about the mechanics of structures and how I didn't manage to solve the statistically indeterminate structure with virtual work on the midterm. He just looked at me and said, "You know you're stupid, right?" Also, I try to be more active during recitation by trying to understand the solved problems in the moment, but I'm just too slow, painfully slow. By the time I understand one question, the class has already finished solving 4 or 5. I'm also in constant fear during recitation because the TA chooses random people to solve problems in front of everyone. Technically, you could decline, but no one gives a crap and they just say, "Don't worry, I'll help." I hate going to recitation. A couple of times already, I've been chosen and I literally just wrote down everything coming out of the TA's mouth. It is such a waste of time and it embarrasses me. I have no friends and I don't go to parties, and you guys are it. I feel bad for my parents paying this much money for me to get educated. If it were up to me, I would just stay home and work a crappy job until I had enough to travel. Don't get me wrong, I love science and all of these things. I'm genuinely excited about fluid mechanics, orbital mechanics, structures, and physics, but I need a better teacher and more time. My programming TA laughed at my code during my first semester. He would always stand behind me and laugh silently at the idiotic things I wrote because I didn't understand much about coding in C. I just finished 5 hours of trying to understand the lecture slides, but I still don't get it. I think I will get kicked out of university this summer. I have more to write, but it is 3 a.m. here and I have to wake up early tomorrow. I'll come back. Story 3. I have high-functioning autism, which means I can do all basic tasks such as dressing myself, cooking, and driving. But I do need an alarm for medicine. If not, it will never be taken. I was not explicitly told what was different about me until high school, and it confused me for years. I knew I was strange and wasn't quite comfortable with my peers. I noticed some of them talk down to me and I wasn't sure why. I was put into special ed for first grade due to my social problems, but was put back into general the next year for a mixture of average and exceptional performance in general studies. And for a while, it convinced me I was normal and it wasn't different at all. When I got to fourth grade, it felt like I hit a brick wall socially and academically. I couldn't do anything more. I got a D in every class but language arts. They put me back in special ed and I stayed there until I graduated. I'm almost 1 year out of high school and I still feel behind socially. I have no active friendships with those my age. I'm doing my best to scrape by, but it still kind of feels hopeless. Story 4. I was always pretty smart, but not like genius level. I did not realize this until later in my life. Then I got a job that I barely qualified for, even with lowered hiring standards, barely passed the training by struggling through with hard work and determination, and finally got into the team after some remedial training. The people I work with are all on the high end of the Mensa scale. I was used to being the smartest person in the room, and now I ask questions that make people look at me like I asked how to tie my shoes. At first, it really bothered me. Then I realized how much I benefited by being the dumbest bulb on the Christmas tree. I still feel like I'm getting shown up when I struggle with concepts these guys think are basic, but I've actually gotten to where I enjoy the environment. Not really what you were looking for, but it's a thing. Story 5. I'm not sure if I counted, but I'll try to explain. I have pretty bad dyslexia, so I'm not sure if it could be that or just me. I know that I'm not amazingly smart, I'm kind of slow and I forget a lot about stuff, but it's okay because that's just who I am and there's not much I can do about it. People tend to notice it and think I'm a bit slow, but they never really say anything about it. But I can see it when they try to oversimplify things when they explain stuff. It's not all doom and gloom though, because I'm a pretty good coder. If I can understand what the issue is, I can normally fix it or build something to fix it. Story 6. Slightly different. I'm fairly intelligent, but I have memory and language issues. I can't remember a lot of things. I don't remember what I was told to do 5 minutes ago. I forget entire segments of time, events, and so on. I can't think of the right words, and even when I do say it completely wrong, smashed up with the wrong words, slurred or stuttered. I often don't realize this until after someone corrects me. I present as a total idiot, really. And it's hard. I have good ideas and I'm artistic and questioning, but it doesn't come out right. I might bring it up again the next day with wonder. I can tell you a fact and then learn it from you the next day with absolute fascination. It's hard to learn concepts that aren't muscle memory. I can embroider a beautiful design, but I can't pass my math class. Forget history, forget timekeeping, because without my phone, I don't know where I'm going or when. It's really depressing. My boyfriend is incredibly intelligent and isn't patronizing when he helps me, but it's hard and I wish I was better. It's all relatively recent too, which hurts more as I was near straight A's in high school, but now my mind is like a sieve holding water and it's hard. Story 7. Again, obligatory I'm not X, but Y scenario. I was retaking the ACT because I wanted to get a higher ACT, a test that goes from 1 to 36. Average in the US is like 20 or 22, I think. To compensate for my fairly low GPA, of course, comparatively to other colleges, not Ivy League, but some high-maintenance ones, GPA of 3.2, so I would retake it. First try was a 29, second was a 32. I was fine with that. There was a break before the actual test began, so I sat down at a desk in the college class. As I was sitting down, just looking outside to the rainy world on an abnormally cold morning of September, this kid walked up to me. Ginger, seemed younger than he actually was, bright face. I could tell he was a cheery type. He was assigned to the seat right next to me. Right when he sat down, he offered me a handshake. I took it as he greeted me with a hearty, "Hello there." We exchanged names. Jonathan was his name. So we naturally got to talking about the subject at hand. "Man, are you ready?" he asked me with a bit of a bro-ish attitude, implying we were cool. "Yeah, I guess," I trailed off. After a brief pause, I asked him about his previous ACT score. "So, what'd you get on the last one?" And he looked kind of down. He answered with a sorrowful 14. I said I got a 22. I didn't want to make him feel that bad. "Yeah, always been the dumb one in the family, I guess." I was curious at this point. "So, like, disability?" I tried to dance around it carefully. "No, but just always been not the smartest, I guess." I eventually asked him this very question. To sum it up, he said basically he felt bad. He worried about getting into college a lot. He thought he was going to fail in life. But he told me he just kept a positive attitude because, really, what else can you do? He seemed still at least somewhat optimistic about his future. I later got his number and asked him how he did. 18, he said gleefully. It was quite a joyful moment, honestly. Story 8. Don't stress out about getting a job. I found that hard-working employees are much more valuable than smart ones. I'd much rather spend extra time training someone who is going to work hard and have a good attitude than hire someone who is just smart. Yes, there are a lot of positions out there you won't have a shot at, but there are plenty of good jobs out there, especially in fields that have people who are traditionally smart tend to look down on. A lot of construction or other similar trades have plenty of good jobs. Look into special skills that you can pick up that make you more valuable, like being able to operate heavy machinery. Story 9. Well, I consider myself standard. I admit a little bit below that, but personally, I don't care. I accepted that fact a long time ago. The fact that others are smarter doesn't make them any better than I am, and that's what it all comes down to in the end. Anyway, it's not so easy to be smart nowadays. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to disappoint someone or even yourself, and that destroys your character. So being standard or a bit below is a great, happy, and satisfying thing from my point of view. Story 10. It's frustrating because I used to be a lot smarter than I am now. Just over 10 years ago, I had let's call it a cardiac incident. Supraventricular tachycardia, they called it, which is more of a description of symptoms than a diagnosis of anything. Anyway, my pulse rate was over 250 BPM, my pressure was 300 over 240. The nurses at the Catholic hospital I was taken to described my EKG strip from when I was brought in as, and I quote, ungodly. When the EMTs first arrived at my job, one of them said they couldn't get a pulse. Yep, my heart was going so fast they couldn't count individual beats. Once in the ambulance, the EMT in back with me said he was going to give me a substance that would stop my heart for a moment, which would give it a chance to reboot. His words. Yes, he was literally going to turn me off, then turn me back on again. The substance felt like someone placed a brick on my chest, but it didn't slow anything down. He gave me a second dose, but only after getting the paddles out. This time, it felt like 2 bricks and my heart stopped. It was only for a few seconds, no more than 5 or 6, but it felt like the longest time in the world. To start with, it felt great. After nearly 45 minutes of my heart going insane, it was a pleasure to have it not. And that feeling of relief was replaced by panic. My heart wasn't beating. After that came relaxation. It didn't hurt. I knew what was going on. If it didn't restart, well, it didn't hurt. And then it restarted, and while my heart was still going quickly, it was like 120 BPM, much more manageable. I spent the night in the hospital watching Game 3 of the 2005 World Series, a nightmare for a Cubs fan like me, and was discharged the following day. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary for a few months. Eventually, I realized that I wasn't finishing crosswords anymore. Indeed, they were becoming frustrating and annoying. My memory wasn't as sharp. I wasn't as clever as I had been. I couldn't really keep up with my friends' wit anymore. I don't know that the cardiac incident or the substances or the White Sox winning the World Series or whatever caused me to become quote-unquote dumber, but I'm not as smart as I was, and it stems from that time. I've been told of something called chemo brain, something some cancer patients have complained of when they feel dumber after chemotherapy. It certainly sounds plausible, but it's terribly frustrating to go from being the smartest guy in the room to being just a guy, only less. Story 11. I can come at it from the other end. I have always had a high IQ, properly tested at 154, and certain things are so easy for me. Words, English, writing, art, crafts, etc. Other things like math, not so much. I got as far as integers and came to a screaming halt. I have 2 degrees, another associate degree, and a couple of diplomas. 4 years ago, I became incredibly ill. I ended up in a hospital on life support in ICU for almost a month. I lost the ability to walk. It took months and months of physio to get back to just being able to walk with the frame. The biggest thing, though, was that while I was on life support, something happened. When I woke up, I felt not only physically drained, but also like I was now processing life through a layer of fuzz on my brain. The doctors told me it would go away as I got better. Well, I got better as I was going to get, and yet the brain fog lingered. I now have trouble remembering words, and sometimes having a conversation is filled with long pauses as I hunt around inside my brain for the words I know are there but I can't get to. I look at how I once was and what I'm left with now, and it hurts. I don't care about how I stack up against other people. It's my own diminishment that makes me sad and frustrated. The things I can't do anymore because I've forgotten how, and I can't relearn them because the steps no longer make any sense. I can handle the not being able to walk thing, but this fuzzy brain and disconnect, to be honest, I'd rather pass away. Story 12. I think there will always be a personal bias, but I think I'm intelligent enough to know that I'm probably below average in intelligence. And because there's 7 billion people in the world, none of my thoughts are really unique, and neither am I. We're all the protagonists in our own lives, but really, we're all quite insignificant. It's weird, and I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I've always felt mature. The older I got, the more I'd criticize my thoughts and my biasness towards myself. I've done it so much that I don't even feel like the protagonist in my own life anymore. I don't think I'm special anymore, but I also don't think anyone else is special anymore. Nothing really fools me either. I know more or less all of us have the same struggles and insecurities. I'd say I'm fairly emotionally intelligent like millions of people out there. I can never be as smart as some, but the fact that I'm not deluded like a lot of people who don't understand their level of intelligence gives me some sort of relief. Story 13. People are generally under the impression that I'm smart. The thing is, according to an IQ test that I did for a job application, I'm pretty dumb. I got a 91, which is below average and just inside the normal range. The thing is, I obtained a master's degree before I took this test, so I never realized that I am not all that intelligent. Whilst I didn't get the job that I took the test for, I did get a job in my field. I don't mind. I think it shows that I am a hard worker and that the type of intelligence measured in an IQ test doesn't really matter that much. Story 14. I'm not sure if this counts, but I've got a tested IQ of above average, had to take a test to get into an extra school program years ago. I've suffered with hormonal migraines for many years. I just take birth control to mitigate it. This past year, I decided to stop the birth control and try another method of controlling the migraines since I was still getting them on occasion. I started Topamax to help with the migraines, and oh my god, until you get used to the medicine, you feel like you're the dumbest person in the world. Concepts were hard to grasp. I constantly forgot things. Short-term memory and long-term, I forgot to pay rent 1 month, for instance. I felt like I was living in a fog that I should be able to understand what was happening around me, but I just couldn't. People would tell me a joke and I wouldn't get it and would have to pretend it or have it explained to me. I've since stopped taking that dose, went back on the birth control and added a very low dose of the Topamax, and everything went back to normal. Story 15. I struggled in school my whole life. I thrived in the social aspect of school, but school itself is so hard for me. There were so many nights where I would just cry and cry because I felt so stupid and that I would never be successful. I feel like I'm smart in some ways, like I'm really intuitive and I understand human behaviors really well, and I can read anything and understand it pretty well. I'm just terrible at expressing my thoughts clearly. Like when I read a beautifully written Reddit post, I understand everything. I just don't understand why my mind can't create sentences like that. So people that are naturally intelligent, be grateful. Story 16. I'm pretty high on vocabulary, trivia, whatever the heck, but I guess I might still count. I have extremely poor memory and social skills. I have a hard time learning what my friends like and dislike to the point where I'm pretty much incapable of giving good gifts. I forget people's names and birthdays, even people I've known for years. I say stupid things in conversation all the time that result in me getting made fun of or losing friendships. I can't make proper small talk. In fact, I can only hold a conversation concerning something I'm very invested in. I often don't understand jokes that other people make. If I do something stupid, I don't realize it until someone gets mad at me over it. Yeah, sure, I have an above average vocabulary, and I can tell you literally anything you want to know about LOL, Terraria, space, or Greek, Roman, Egyptian mythos, but I don't really know my way around a normal conversation. And if you're feeling any of these stories so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 17. How do you explain something like that? There's so many different things that could cause a person to have below average intelligence, ranging from education level, where they were raised, who raised them, to their genetics, and if they have a mental or neurological condition. But seriously, in my case, it feels bad, man, so thanks for asking. I just feel like my brain doesn't function like the average person's. I'm slow, mentally, physically, and socially. I feel like there's just a limit to what my brain could do, and it stopped at the simple stuff. Common sense and logic doesn't apply to me in practice the same way as it does other people. Forget multitasking and reaction times too, that's why I don't drive. Anyway, I'd like to one day see someone about my brain function, but I don't know what kind of doctors might help me do that. A psychologist, a neurologist, both? It would be nice to know if there's truly something not right or if I'm, by design, just mentally a late bloomer and a slow processor. Anyway, this has affected my confidence immensely, and no one I know understands. Yay. Story 18. My comment will probably just be a repeat of all the information above, but I just wanted to chime in with, I'm the same way. I absorb information like a dry sponge. I read, listen, research, etc., but to tell it back to you? Not possible. The best way I can describe it is when someone tells you a joke you've heard before and you know the answer, but you can't remember it. Or maybe you just can't remember the exact punchline, and as soon as they say it, this wave of information hits your brain and you say, oh yeah, I knew that. Then of course they give you the sure you did look. Through high school and even today, I can grasp concepts in a heartbeat no matter the topic and even work out the information or solve the issue. Explaining it back to a person though, and I sound like an idiot. I don't consider myself intelligent by any means, just the abstract thinker who makes things more complicated than they really are. Since high school, less than a decade ago, I'm not sure if I've just stunted or surrounded myself with people who are just smart, but my confidence has dropped and I've developed hesitations, like long pauses where I have to try and form my sentences, which makes me sound like I have difficulty speaking, but it's honestly just organizing the heck out of my thoughts. Unfortunately, this has caused some social issues, as well as even being told at work that I'm horrible with presentations, which I accept. Anyways, despite this rant, what it comes down to is it has its bliss moments. People I have seen who are too smart for their own good always seems to be overwhelmed with the world around them and generally unhappy, which is what I have observed from those around me. I can usually absorb, ponder, then continue moving on without it affecting me too much. But But there are frustrating, depressing, and downright horrible moments that follow it too. I do want to improve my smarts or memory or whatever may be the issue. Story 19. I can tell you exactly what it's like. I always had the markers of intellectual disability. I have absolutely no visual memory. I can't remember numbers, names, or anything really. Sometimes my brain will decide to switch two things in my mind while I'm thinking. It's very difficult to explain. I can't do any math in my head whatsoever. Nothing ever comes out right. I can never remember the order of I and E or I and O ever, no matter how many times I memorize it. Small mistakes creep into everything that I do. These mistakes make it impossible for me to get through high school. And there are 1,000 other things that I can't think of right now. I would encounter these things when I was a kid, but it wasn't until I was like 20 that I put it together and realized that I was truly less intelligent than most people. And as I've gotten older, I've noticed a lot of other things that I thought were normal but are not. The worst part is the jealousy I feel for other people. Other people understand context and don't make so many little mistakes and actually have friends. They see sarcasm with such ease. And I hate everyone because I feel like they get to have this great life while I'm stuck feeling less than human. Being dumb really does make you feel less than human. It makes you a target for bullies, and for me, low intelligence ruined my social life. I grew up being literally terrified of encountering people I knew because when I talked to people, they would realize I'm slow. Imagine living your life like a game of hide and seek where you are trying to avoid any form of contact with anyone you go to school with, because as soon as people start talking to you, your status as a slow and boring idiot is cemented into place within their minds. And it was hell. Whenever I was forced to interact with people, it would be like a marathon sprint trying to keep up and not look stupid. Those encounters would leave me physically exhausted. Simple run-ins at the grocery store were physically exhausting. I still deal with this. Being in a professional atmosphere helps with that a lot though, because interactions are much more superficial. Another terrible aspect of it is being talked down to by people. Once familiarity is established, the other person talks down to me or never takes anything I say seriously. It's so frustrating to see people's eyes glaze over automatically when I start talking. And when I'm talking, people interrupt me constantly, even if the thing they interrupt me about is totally mundane or a complete change of topic. I have slowly become more self-aware in my adult years, and these small signs of disinterest and lack of respect pop up often. And in each instance, I realize that they were there all along, but I hadn't noticed it. It's nothing major, but it really depresses me. Other people don't seem to put people to sleep like I do. I'm working on changing this though. I always laugh when people complain about good-looking people. Good-looking people have an unfair advantage. They have it so good. Actually, it's people who have a brain who have the advantage, because there is absolutely nothing more isolating than being stupid, and being isolated is hell. People hate me automatically because my looks are above average, and they hate me even more when they get to know me because I'm slow. People just do not like people who are slower than them. Growing up in this situation has given me a very cynical and negative perspective on life. People who are smart are like gods to me. They see everything so clearly. They glide through life so elegantly. Their personalities are totally devoid of the negativity and the scars that come with living life with a brain like mine. They are so carefree. I grew up around some very smart people, and I was always amazed at how relaxed and carefree they always seemed compared to me. Story 20. I started having seizures when I was 14. I was a straight-A student at the time. I didn't notice a change immediately, but in the 7 years since, I have had about 8 concussions. All of them have been from falling during a seizure. It could be a combination of the anti-seizure medication I take and the concussions, but I do not feel nearly as intelligent. I had a photographic memory beforehand and learning was effortless. I still managed to get good grades and graduate from college in 4 years. Oftentimes, my friends and family will remind me of an event recently or years previous, and I just can't remember. It's like it never happened. It's not the best feeling, but I remember significant events. Story 21. So I started taking piano lessons when I was 7. It was one of those things where my parents made me go to the lesson every week, even though I never practiced and didn't care about the piano at all. When I went into middle school, everyone had to either sing or pick an instrument. I picked the bassoon. Basically, because so few people played the bassoon, I would just get into things by default. There would be auditions for ensembles, and I would get in simply because they needed 3 bassoon players, but only 2 tried out or something like that. I would participate in these ensembles and festivals with the best 5% or so musicians in my region, and I just did not have the talent they did. For a lot of the people in these groups, especially as I got older, music just clicked for them. Everything aligned for them. The gears were all lubricated and it just made perfect sense. This was never the case for me, so I would be put in an ensemble with very high expectations for the students, and I was just unable to meet those expectations. I would constantly have to water down music so I could play it, and to this day, I cannot tell you if a note I'm playing is in tune or not. With the bassoon, it got to the point where I just said, I'll never be as good as these people, so I'm just going to stop trying. My entire high school experience was just music, music, music because my parents thought schools would give me a scholarship because I played the bassoon well, lol. I still got into the ensembles by default, but it would take me a really long time to learn the music. My bassoon peers would move on to more challenging material and I would still be struggling with the easier stuff. With the bassoon, this didn't really bother me that much because I stopped giving a crap about the bassoon. However, it made me angry to the nth degree with the piano because I had just been taking lessons for so long. In high school, I'd been playing the piano for the majority of my life, but people who had been only playing for like a year would already be lapping me in terms of musicality. I was just very angry with myself every time I struggled with easy material. I wanted to quit so badly because it would take me so long to learn pieces that other students my age could bang out in like a day. More than anything else, I was just angry with myself and my brain because at the end of the day, I'm just not a musical person. What made it even worse was that my family would always tell me how wonderfully I played or that I was so talented when that blatantly wasn't true. I spent years just being mad at myself and my lack of ability. When I went to college, not on a bassoon scholarship, I stopped doing anything music related and took a semester-long creativity break. This was one of the best decisions I have ever made because it allowed me to be forgiving to myself. When I was finally ready to go back to music, I only did it for me. Music has shaped me and helped me in all aspects of my life, but the most important thing it taught me is, well, that some things aren't competitions. Sometimes you downright suck at something, but that's okay because it doesn't have to be a competition. Story 22. I consider myself smart in the work that I do. I can do math really quickly in my head and I can analyze blueprints very well. Outside of what I do though, I'm pretty dumb. I couldn't tell you crap about science or much history. I talk to people who are smarter than me all the time, but when they ask about what I do, they can't keep up with the things I tell them. I didn't graduate high school, yet I have a well-paying job surrounded by college graduates, engineers, and people with high-level degrees. I can see that they respect me and that's a win for me. I tell them all the time, jokingly, that I don't actually know what I'm doing, but no one seems to notice. Story 23. I've always wondered if I'm below average in intelligence. I've had people all over the years make comments about me being a blonde, and I've always just struggled in life. I feel like I have to work harder than most to get the same results, especially with school. I don't know what is wrong with me, and it really bothers me. For example, I might have trouble sliding a vehicle door because I'm opening it the wrong way. It takes me a second or two to catch on, but I feel like most people just get it and don't have to think about it. I might make a comment that comes off as completely stupid, although I've improved over the years. I still cringe when I think back to when I was 18 and I thought I might get a disease from the hole left by a flu shot in my arm. I am currently having problems at work. I struggle with the skills required and I've been beating myself up over it. Is it a lack of confidence? Am I just clumsy? Or am I genuinely stupid? I think this has started to become a major issue for me over the last few years. I wish I were smarter and able to live and function normally. I wish I would stop having these blonde moments. I hate it. I've tried explaining my struggle to a friend, but he doesn't understand. He thinks I'm being too negative and I get frustrated because I feel like he's not listening to what I'm saying. Story 24. I've never had any IQ test, but it's pretty clear I'm pretty behind the curve. I think I've always known, but sometimes it is very frustrating. Growing up, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, Tourette's, as well as ADHD, which made my years leading up to high school graduation challenging. I can accept that I take longer to grasp rudimentary concepts, but the social struggles have always been the hardest for me. I'm always embarrassing myself or missing a lot of clear social context. It's taken me a long time to figure out where I belong in a societal perspective, but I believe I found my path thanks to my great family and girlfriend. I'm taking a computer networking and cloud technology program, and I've never been happier. Computers make sense to me. There are no social nuances to grasp. It's just simply telling it what you want it to do and how to do it. Story 25. Academically, I am below average. I had a lot of trouble absorbing information if it wasn't something I already had a grasp on. For example, I was freaking brilliant at Japanese, but while I was almost just as into my music class as I was Japanese, my performance skills were the only reason I passed music. My finals for year 12 saw my mathematics mark at 52%. It's very hard to fail your finals in NSW Australia. It wasn't that I was doing badly in class, it was that I wasn't absorbing it enough to regurgitate it during exams. I did ancient history for 8 months and had to quit. My marks were at 23% at one point. Due to how the system works here, it was beneficial to my class for me to leave. I didn't want to drag down the super intelligent with my marks. While math and English were split into intelligence classes, I always felt sorry for my religion class as we were split by case study. My class being Buddhism. I only did one unit of religion, so the mark was out of 50. I got 26 in my finals. I once had someone tell me I was street smart, but after dating my partner for a while, he had to sit me down and tell me that person was a dirty freaking liar. I came across that way because while my sister's maturity never went beyond 16 due to depression, mine did, so I seem more intelligent than I am in the comparison. During this conversation with my partner, he said I also just tend to say what I'm thinking without really thinking it, but I'm also really cut off if the topic is about me. So I'd say whatever I want as long as we're not talking about me. I notice this too. I come across as very slow and dim-witted if I'm meeting new people, and they ask about me. Typing about me is no problem because I have time to think and read over what I'm saying, but face-to-face is difficult. It took a long time to adjust to a workplace. I set off our alarm within 1 week of working because I'd misheard the instructions of how to shut up the office. Honestly though, I think someone should have been with me the first time I had to do it, or at least show me how to do it. I'll quite often just stare if I don't understand instructions before it occurs to me I should ask again. I am slow, not smart, but I know how to drive, care for my dogs, and love my partner unconditionally, so I got that going for me. Story 26. I'm 26 and I have a job working on photocopiers and networks. When it comes to general knowledge, I'm alright, but I'm terrible with history even though I like to watch documentaries on it. And I'm crap with geography. I'm not really dumb, but I find it really difficult to pass exams. I have to physically do something to understand it, and once I understand how something works, I never forget it. I'm able to read, but I really struggle with taking in the information and remembering it. If I were to read a book, by the time I'm on the 4th page, I've forgotten everything about the previous pages. It sucks. Story 27. About a month ago, my doctor and I discussed readjusting some medications that I take, and he put me on one that was just literally making me feel like someone took a large rod and rammed it into my head several times. I'm already on an amphetamine for ADHD and a couple of other things, but this specific antidepressant that I was put on, I got the most extreme of its side effects. I actually mentally became very low functioning. I felt like all my thoughts were slathered with a thick coat of butter, and the minute I tried to hold on to them, they would immediately slip away. I couldn't even formulate proper sentences. I would be telling my partner a story that could easily be summed up in 2 minutes to still be trying to explain it 5 minutes in before he stops me to tell me, "I can't follow, you aren't making any sense." My mind just felt extremely foggy, like it was constantly being shaken and all the contents of it were rattling around, dropping to the floor and just laying there, not doing anything. I literally felt like I was taking a stupid pill. I couldn't read my books, my comments on Reddit were pretty much garbage and nonsensical, my social interactions were just so goddamn bizarre. Eventually it started to give me vertigo and my jaw and neck completely clenched. Went to the doctor and gotten taken off of it immediately. I now feel almost back to 100%, but it took a while for my mind to kind of recuperate and get its crap together. It was depressing, it was awful, and it was so frustrating and hurtful to go through all of that and not even be able to explain it or come up with the words as to what was happening. Story 28. I always thought I was stupid since I was younger. I had several reading and learning disorders in the slow class. I got mediocre grades and was advised to not take any honors classes. It really made me feel awful, and I saw that being put in generalized classes didn't help me. It slowed me down. I forced myself to take almost all AP and honors, even though I wasn't getting all A's and B's. I felt like I was learning. I applied to the best school in the state, was accepted, and I applied for disability services. I was tested as part of the disability services application, and it turned out I had an IQ of over 140. I just had really bad ADHD. My brain is fast to process and find patterns in material, but it's impossible for me to focus on work. I saw an analogy on Reddit about high IQ ADHD that said something similar to, "It's like having the engine of a Ferrari in a piece of crap car." For so long, I felt like I was incredibly lacking, was always sensitive about the quality of my work. I couldn't show others my work, communicate with teachers or professors, and work with others for fear of being considered stupid, to a point where I had developed GAD, and totally shut down. I was depressed, wanted to escape, had no appetite, and felt persistently overwhelmed and hopeless. I took a year off and have been going to weekly sessions with a therapist and psychologist. Story 29. I've got a high IQ, 120 or 130, but I'm really dumb. Growing up, my best friend and little brother and uncles all used to tell me I was retarded and I couldn't do math, wouldn't be able to manage myself as an adult, etc. I remember one time when my best friend and I were hanging out in high school, I revealed that I didn't know how to cook and she called me an invalid. For a long time, I believed in my heart that lying was 100% wrong and no one should ever lie, ever. I fell for a lot of BS because I didn't have enough critical thinking skills and never looked out into the future for potential consequences. I just never planned ahead. I also made the mistake of thinking other people wanted the best for me and were always telling the truth. I think I qualify based on that as a vulnerable adult. Nowadays, I am able to lie if I have to, usually if someone wants to borrow money. But I still wind up feeling that there's some secret to life that other people know and I don't. I look at people who are more cruel and see that they've got their life figured out. They do well professionally, they dress better, and I think that somehow their cruelty is what enabled them to get ahead in life. Sometimes I try to emulate that cruel behavior, but it never turns out quite the same and I never get ahead like I do. Most of the time, I just feel like I'm an actor. I get made fun of a lot for being a nerd and it hurts, so I try to modify my behavior so I'm less nerdy. It sucks. I feel like nobody will ever accept me for who I am. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.